Many people were wondering why we were going to buy fuel for almost 7 cedis. Then in February, it shot up to 7 cedis, 42 pesos. I remember people were making fun of the increments, and I heard people talking about break the 8, break the 8, and break the 8. Now, just look at what is on the screen. These are the average prices of fuel products. I specifically looked at petrol and diesel from January to now. And you will understand the gravity of the challenge that we are talking about. In April, it was closing into 10 cedis. And at that time, the cedi to dollar ratio was 7.79. As at October 24th, 2022, fuel prices had shot up to 14.48 cedis. And today, as we speak, the price is about 23.49 cedis per liter. So basically, for those of us who buy fuel in gallons, 1 gallon of petrol is about 80 cedis. Now, what makes this conversation even more worrying is that if you look at January 6.90 to November 17.99, you look at diesel 7.42 at the time, and as we speak, diesel is now selling at 23 cedis. You ask yourself, if you were earning 2,500 cedis a month as an average worker, be it a teacher or a nurse, whatever, and you are driving, it would mean that if you are still surviving on 2,500, then you must be a magician or a thief or be corrupt or be a beggar to survive. Otherwise, if you look at the price differentials, it's about 160%. So fuel has gone up on the average by 160%. Now, today, if you were taking 2,500 at the time, you need about 4,000 cedis to be able to survive comfortably, even though it was painful at the time in January. But we all know many people have not had salary adjustment. Now, how does this affect you? I remember I was buying a crate of egg for 8 cedis or 12 cedis, depending on the sizes, around January, February, March. Today, a crate of egg is about 45 cedis. Today, as we speak, if you are buying water for 20 pesos, today you are buying 60 pesos. What is even more painful, because some of the staff I work with have expressed this concern. You will see on the screen some lorry fares. So if you commute from Accra to Ashaiman every day, or you commute from Adenta to Accra every day because you work at the ministries, you are a public servant, you are a teacher, you are most likely to spend about 4 or 5 times you spent about 8 months ago. So on the average, if you check, these are the intercity fares. Accra to Kumasi, 100 cedis. Accra to Ashanti Mampong, 110 cedis. Kumasi to Sunyani is a bit cheaper, that is 35 cedis. But you need 275 cedis to travel from Accra to Hamile, or just around the same figure to Nandom, or almost 300 cedis to Garu. So it would mean that many people going to Garu or the part of the northern belt or going to the Bono areas, they may not be able to go home again because they simply cannot afford to use about a quarter of their salaries to pay transport fares. Tonight, our conversation is simple. We are looking at the realities of life today. We will also be looking at the statement the president made last Sunday, because they gave us advance notice. He spoke at a time when we knew that there were calls for consensus building. And instead of calling for a broader consultation, he met groups, the Forex Bureaus Association, the Association of Banks, the CEOs of banks, the Bank of Ghana officials, the cabinet, government itself. In fact, there were GPRTU, market women. He was just meeting everybody. And he says he's satisfied with the processes, ignoring the presentation by former President John Mahama and the recommendations made and he spoke to us and made his own commendations. So today, I'm engaging a lecturer at the University of Professional Studies. He also is a governance expert, Dr. Fred Awal. Dr. Fred Awar is with me in the studio. Doc, you are welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good. Doc, I don't know, how easy has it been coping over the past few weeks?
Well, of course, I'm Ghanaian, and the rules are no exceptions to me. Things have been a bit difficult for every Ghanaian, and that is reflective of what we hear in the media landscape. We hear people not being able to do what they could do in the past, and this is not a departure from those of us who are also in the classrooms. We have had a series of engagements with government relative to our conditions of service, relative to issues that border directly on our car maintenance and fuel allowances, and you would know that as I speak now, lecturers are on strike.
Yes, but some would say, lecturers, you are better off. Dr. Fred Awar, you get consultancy fees from extra things you may do elsewhere, so you have easy source of income. And just recently, I remember research and book allowances were increased. And so you don't have much problem. Apart from your salary, these things are sitting there for you.
Perhaps if you want to go that way, lecturers would have a divergent view with you.
Why?
Because the issue of books and research allowances is still hanging in such a manner.
Was it not dollar rated?
It was. So we negotiated with government on a rate of $1 to 6 cedis.
At that time?
At that time. And as it stands, not all universities have been paid. I think this government started paying somewhere around last week or a week before then in batches to different universities. My university hasn't benefited from it yet. Now, remember that as at the time we negotiated with Ghana, it was pegged at 6 cedis per dollar. Now the dollar is 15 cedis, meaning we are losing a whole lot of money.
Losing 9 cedis?
Absolutely.
Per dollar?
Per dollar.
For the rate agreed on?
Absolutely. Multiplied by the total sum of money that we are expected to get from the government. So I would not agree with you if you posit that lecturers are better off. The economic conditions are hard, and every strata of Ghana's economy is affected, including academia. So
now let's look at the realities vis-a-vis assurances or statements being made. Last week was very busy for the presidency. Apart from cabinet meeting to look at issues, conversations around the IMF, bringing to the table what they are hearing the public say on different platforms, the president personally created the impression that he was engaging critical key stakeholders. Around that time, it was also advertised that the former president, John Dramani Mahama, was also going to speak to the economy. And because the public had always been critical by saying, don't just criticize, offer recommendations, he did. Then on Sunday, our president spoke, and he also made some promises and gave the assurance that, yes, it's tough, but it will be better. When you were listening to the president after the conversations prior to Sunday, what was going through your mind?
Well, so this, I think your question is loaded, and I want to take it in bits.
Good.
Now, in the first instance, I think that it was a good thing that the president addressed us. At least it shows some level of concern for the people of Ghana. I also want to commend the president for the fact that he said the presidency, that is he and his vice president, together with our district chief executives, they would cut off their salaries by 30% effective 2023. Now, the first bit of it, by just saying that they would cut it by 30%, makes good sense. It would have been complimentary if he said effectively. Because the president, effective from now, because the president did indicate that we are in this together. So if we are in this together and ordinary Ghanaians are suffering, why do you defer the reduction of your salary to another year? So that is the challenge that I have with the statement.
But he had told Ghanaians this months ago.
Okay.
So many people were asking that where is the value you are placing on the deductions where we can show a tangible or verifiable source that is about what the money is being used for? And so if the president is now suggesting that it is effective 2023, so I would have thought you didn't say anything exciting.
So, absolutely. So that's my challenge about the president's statement. I would have thought that to show commitment to the people of Ghana, especially so when he made a pronouncement that we are in this together, I would have thought that there would have been some level of relief to the people of Ghana if he says, because of the agency and the nature of the economy now, we are sacrificing this amount of money effective from now, and then make a bold authorization, okay, to the pay structures that from effective today ensure that our amounts are reduced by this amount, by this percentage, and then it should be geared towards subsidizing A, B, or C. I think that would have been more relieving to the people of Ghana. Now, the issue of consultations. Reality remains that there are still, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, former president, did make some commitments toward addressing the nation, meaning that he also had some issues he had to proffer towards mitigating the difficulties we are in. There is the issue of former President Agyekum Kufuor still being alive. So if I was the president of the Republic of Ghana in turbulent times like this, I would have consulted both of them. The three of us would have sat down, devoid of partisan thinking. In any case, if it's going to be partisan, it's going to be 2 against 1, because His Excellency John Agyekum Kufuor is NPP. So John Mahama would have been the odd one amongst them. That is, if we are looking at it from partisan lenses, they would have sat, looked at the issues holistically. That's my opinion. And then a holistic way forward would be gotten for the people of Ghana. I say this because John Mahama has his followers.
Mm-hmm. Let's face our
sorry.
And then
I'm very sorry. John Mahama has his followers.
Right.
John Agyekum Kufuor has his followers. They have all been part of the governance systems of Ghana, and they have had difficulties in the past, and how they maneuvered, they still have intact the sort of memory of how they did that. So I would have thought that this collective thinking, making it more of a nationalistic thing, not just one of the presidency and then the current regimes.
So would you say that, because normally when these things happen, when president speaks, finance ministers speak, or critical influential people in any nation speak, they influence market figures. And so the investment community is sitting at one side, the buy-in and the collective interest, which settles with the fine example you cited by bringing those people on board, would have sent a stronger signal. I am reading something that was attributed to Professor Stephen Adey. And basically he was saying that if he was the president, what would he do? He says, first of all, beyond the finance minister who must go, he's thinking that it should not be him alone, but there must be a clear restructuring, which would mean that the president would have been speaking to us by Christmas to say that I am slashing down my ministers. Maybe he's even proposing 40 ministers. Now, all these people have been speaking consistently. The president and his team, after telling us they have the men, seem not to be responding to this. How do you see or situate this as far as governance and politics is concerned?
Well, this conversation has been long overdue, because I remember when the ruling NPP was in opposition, they criticized the then NDC for having a very bulky ministerial size of government. Yeah. So the expectations were that when they took power, maybe they still wanted to stabilize, so they had a bigger size of government, perhaps just to be able to stabilize the economy and then to shrink it to a size that our budget could contain. However, it hasn't been so. And in times of emergency like this, we would have thought that this would have been the right time to show example of a little government that would help our finances. And that is not happening. So I think that the conversation that Professor Adai is proffering at this hour,
the president should be listening.
Absolutely.
But you remember that in the within the second quarter of 2018, when the public appear to be complaining about the large size of government appointees, where you go to one ministry, you have about 4 deputies, 5 deputies. I remember either the local government or agric ministry, there were 5 deputies at the local government ministry, somebody in charge of crops, somebody in charge of something, and so on. The response from the president at the time was that Ghanaians should not think about the size of the government, but their delivery. It is now obvious that it's an abysmal performance. But the rhetoric is that we have done well, and he's refusing to cut down the size of his government. Is that good enough? Or are Ghanaians not reacting angrily enough because it is our money? It is not for their comfort.
Well, so I don't know the extent of anger you want Ghanaians to show, but clearly in the media landscape, Ghanaians are talking. They are indicating that they are not happy about the way things are being done. It is basically so because it's reflective in the way they are unable to purchase basic commodities. So I think Ghanaians have shown their anger. Conversely, what maybe you want to ask is whether government is not listening enough, because Ghanaians have a bargain with government that you are going to govern us for a given period of time and ensure you make our lives better. Mm-hmm. That is the basic reason that any person would vote a government into power. So once you find yourself in power and you are a government, and then your followers or the citizens start speaking in a given language, it is important that you start listening. Because if you don't listen, the alternative that may come your way may be that which will not be palatable, because it is through the term that you came in, and tendencies are that if you don't take measures to correct the wrongs that the people are speaking about, then you'll be ejected from the seat through the term, just as they brought you in.
Now, these things are happening, and I'm hearing some quite alarming caution notes that people are subtly sending to government.
Okay.
When the president himself started engaging the people, I remember he met the military in Kumasi. Mm-hmm. and spoke to them. When the former president spoke, he also made an appeal to the military to look at Ghana, and there are speculations even about the possibility of people staging something to disturb the stability of this country. I was monitoring what people have been saying, and I put together these 3 critical words. Timidity. Mm-hmm. I looked at hypocrisy and greed. And these appear to be weaving through the fabric of the typical Ghanaian. And so I have the term, you come to me to beg for power, I empower you, give you all the things that should give you the comfort and the sound mind to operate. Then I turn around and to appear as if I am afraid of you, and you manipulate the processes to my disadvantage. The 3 words I use, timidity, hypocrisy, and greed. Mm-hmm. Reflect on it and listen to a loud voice, which is now the late. And what he said as far back as the early 80s reflects our situation today and why we think governance has been thrown out. Listen to it.
I'm saying that we can vote people in and out, personalities, okay? But my dear, what we need to do in this country is to establish a situation where even if it was the devil who should come and sit on top of us in Ghana, by virtue of certain procedures, certain practices, the devil cannot get away with doing whatever he wants. He would necessarily have to do what the people expect of him.
So that was the late former President Jerry John Rawlings. I want you to listen again carefully, because we appear not to be ready to protect this democracy we have come for.
I'm saying that we can vote people in and out, personalities, okay? But my dear, what we need to do in this country is to establish a situation where even if it was the devil who should come and sit on top of us in Ghana, by virtue of certain procedures, certain practices, the devil cannot get away with doing whatever he wants. He would necessarily have to do what the people expect of him.
So that was Jerry John Rawlings. May his soul rest in peace. What he has said over 3-4 decades ago appear to be very relevant today. Sometimes some will say even more relevant. If you go to the Western countries, I'll use UK because they've gone through some phases which resonates with what we find ourselves today. The economy wasn't bad. The finance minister was under pressure. He implemented the policy that didn't work. He was sacked because the prime minister knew that pressure was coming. After he was sacked, the prime minister was told to go to. She was proving a bit difficult, trying to assure the people. Then her own people, top appointees in her government, started leaving, and eventually she had to go. That is Western democracy implemented to the letter and to the advantage of the masses. It's the opposite in Ghana. So hypocrisy, timidity, greed, does it fit in? And where did we go wrong?
Well, so basically in governance, what His Excellency Jerry John Rawlings said is what we teach, putting in place the right structures. Now, when you have structures that work, then tendencies are that governance will be perfect. On the contrary, if you have structures that seem not to have good political commitment to ensure that they work well, then everything perhaps may not work very well. So you situate this conversation around the United Kingdom. Now, the political systems in the advanced world are quite different from what we have here. A person gets into politics because he has something to offer his nation or his constituents. Contrary in our system or in the jurisdiction Ghana, politics is seen more as an economic venture. It is where you go to amass wealth. So people do not go with some clear conscience. They go with the set mindset that they are going to scoop some wealth of the state and then enriching themselves. And that is what we are seeing in current times. Now, if I was the Minister of Finance, I wouldn't be on the seat today. Because almost everyone has spoken against what? The Minister of Finance. And even if nobody spoke against him, your conscience alone should prick you to tell you that you are not doing your work well, so you get out of it.
Is he not being encouraged by the president to be in his seat as the finance minister, when obviously even the world body must realize that this is a crisis that is beyond just individuals?
So in my previous statement, you would have heard me say that for structures to work, there is the need for good political commitment. So the issue of the presidency in this later conversation comes under political what? Commitment. Because as a president, if you have employees under you, the reasoning is that they are supposed to help you to govern the country well. So if they are not doing well, you don't need anyone to tell you to get them out of work. It's just like you sitting here. You are an employee of this organization. If you start making mistakes that would cost this organization money, you shouldn't be here.
I have to be kicked out.
Absolutely, and then somebody else comes in. You don't need public opinion on this. So it boils down to political commitment.
So where do you place timidity and hypocrisy? Because some people are speaking now. Maybe they would have spoken earlier and that would have made an impact.
Okay.
Now, this weekend, for example, I know lawyer Martin Pebu is organizing a demonstration.
True.
It is supposed to send a certain signal across. Do you expect mass participation? If it doesn't happen, does it reflect the issue of hypocrisy, I don't care, and so on about the typical Ghanaian?
Well,
because that is the weak system that the politicians are exploiting.
So Kwebu's initiative is one that is welcoming for as long as he goes through the laid down rules and regulations for demonstration, getting police permit and all of that.
All those cleared.
Yeah, if all those are cleared, I think that is a good way to go. Now, you drum home the fact that things are not working very well. You are saying it in the media like you and I are having a conversation here. People are writing through newspapers, but of course you must also go through the streets to drum home the fact that things are not going well. Now, as to whether people will participate or not would depend largely on how well he mobilizes the grassroots for these demonstrations. But the issue of timidity also comes in. There have been instances within this these times where people go on demonstrations and then warm water is poured on them, rubber bullets are fired at them. So that alone intimidates people who want to get out to demonstrate. But the reality is that in the body politic of every nation, before development counts, people sacrifice. People have sacrificed for Ghana to be where it is. Even Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who fought for independence for us, state officials, including the police, lost their lives because they wanted Ghana to be what? Independent. So to the extent that we want better lives for ourselves and then our children, there's the need for us to start talking. There is the need for us to come out when we have to register our displeasure on things that governments are doing. So I think that true, some Ghanaians are timid, and they are timid for reasons that are best known to themselves. But I think it's high time we stop being timid.
Now let's look at we'll cross into other areas and still link it to governance and security. I made reference to a crate of egg, a bag of rice.
Okay.
I know the basic things that we depend on, from toiletries to provisions to vegetables to grains and so on. Everything is above board.
Okay.
When the president spoke recently, he tried to suggest that the system is worse off because traders, businesses are simply exploiting us. Some have expressed contrary view. You have made a lot of observation on the ground. What is your opinion on this?
Well, I think that I do not agree with the president on those assertions. Now, when you don't give it a critical thought, there are tendencies to want to skew your thinking towards what the president said, but it's not that. It shouldn't be the case. So you gave us a price list from January till now. That is just for fuel. Now, when people analyze issues of the economy and they look at fuel, they don't attach it to the implications that are related to other things. So, for instance, I am an articulator driver or a Kia driver. I go to the hinterlands to cut maybe a plantain to Accra to sell. In January, the price was what? Price of fuel
is 90 pesos.
Okay, so that's how much fuel he needed for a liter. Now, remember that when you get to the farm, there are people we call loading boys who cut the plantain into what? The Kia truck. What they used to charge in January, they wouldn't charge the same now, because in January they used to buy kinky for 2 cedis, now they are buying it for 3 cedis. Are we together?
Right.
So this same fuel has trickle effects on a chain. Are we together? So, and when this articulator or tipper or whatever driver gets into the city, remember that these people, not all of them have market stores. Some are kept in warehouses. Prices of warehouses are also...
You know what I would do?
No.
You speak to this more, but Alhaji Mohammed Tanko is the president of the National Association of Cargo Drivers. Okay. He has joined us. We'll do some 5-8 minutes with him, and then we'll continue our conversation still from where he stopped. Alhaji, good evening and thanks for your time on Ideas Exchange.
Good evening.
Alhaji, how is life? How are you coping with the current situation we find ourselves?
About the diesel, the current situation of our transport now is very bad. It's very bad because what we are buying the diesel now is too high for us. Formerly, some can buy 3,000 diesel. It can take him for some distance, but now I think formerly, if there's one driver, he said he buy 9,000 cedis, but now he buy 15,300.
15,000?
Because formerly it's a 3,000 per drum, right? But now he used to buy three drums. But when he buy it now, the one drum is 5,300. So when he buy 3 drums, it costs about 15,900.
Now, Alhaji, hold on. When he buys the 3 drums, Does it last for a month?
Formerly.
Is it for one trip?
Formerly, yes. Formerly, you buy one trip, the one is going to Tamale. He buy one drum, 3 drums, which is cost about 9,000 because then the drum is 3,000. But now the drum is 5,300. So when he buy 3 drums, it's in 15,900
for one trip to Tamale.
One trip.
So how does this affect the commodities you cut, whether it is foodstuff and so on?
Today, I called some people. They said yesterday they called them at Zabzugu, giving them 130 CDs to Kumasi. They say no, they are not going. They won't take it because if they take, the diesel will take all the money, so they won't get anything. So they refuse to go.
So that means cargo drivers are also gradually joining commercial drivers who want to stop their operations. Yes,
because when you take the car, when you buy, for now, you use about 14,000 to buy a diesel. And how much are you going to get?
Now, but we know that you pass the cost to traders. For example, if it is onion or maize or groundnut you are going to pick. So why are you complaining?
You see, the commodities are plenty, are many. Because yam also is our food. We carry yam from Bimbila, Yindi, Zabzugu, Tatale, all the area at the north, in the north. We carry it to Accra. And when we come to Accra, we have to try and get some load before we go back. Otherwise, what you brought from the charge you brought to Accra, it will reach you to go back to your place.